at and he'll just be going through some motivational questions because he received a spring offer from Bank of America in his first year in the investment banking division. So if there are any questions that you guys have, please just put them in the chat because we'll be going through them in the end. And also I'll be putting Pravin's LinkedIn in the comments section shortly, so you guys can ask him any questions if you want later on. So I'm just going to pass it over to Pravin.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks for your introduction, Samantha. Yeah, so first off, it's I just want to start by saying it's really good to see so many of you here. Even before university started, which is quite impressive given I personally wasn't this motivated to attend events like this before university started. So well done for that. So yeah, as Samantha said, I received a spring offer for Bank of America. And you're probably wondering, have I converted it into a summer offer? So my assessment center is actually in the first week of October. So I guess we'll have to wait and see for that. And yeah, I did an insight program at Deloitte. That was also a lot of fun. So yeah, I guess I'll also run you through how I'm gonna structure today's presentation. So first, I'm going to be talking to you about the different kinds of questions that you could be asked. So why this division, why this role, etc., etc. And then I'm going to move on to how to present yourself as well, because I think how you present yourself is as important, or if not more important, than what you say, the content of what you say, especially at the spring level. Just to show that you are an enthusiastic person, you are interested, you have interests outside of academia, outside of your interest of finance as well. Because remember, when you're working with investment bankers or working in any job for that matter of fact, you're going to be sitting with them for long hours in a day, and especially investment banking, up to 16 hours in a day. So they want to make sure that you are an interesting person, you have interests outside, and being able to convey that in an interview is super important as well. So yeah, these are just the questions that I'm going to be running through. So yeah, I'll start with why you. I'll be surprised if you don't get this in an interview. 99% of the time, you're going to get this in an interview. So yeah, because it's the first question you're going to get, you want to leave a long-lasting, good, positive impression on the interviewer. So it's really, really crucial to nail this particular question, to focus on this question quite a bit and practice it as much as you can. It's an easy question to get right, but not many people do get it right. So yeah, I'm just going to be talking to you about how I personally attack this question. So yeah, another variation of this question could be walk me through your CV, or tell me a bit more about yourself. They're all pretty much the same question. So I tend to structure my answer for this question. So first off, I'll give a brief introduction as to who I am. So my name, where I study, what degree I'm doing, and what year I'm in my degree. So then after that, I'll move on to the more nitty-gritty stuff that they want to hear. So my experiences. Now, at the spring level, it doesn't necessarily need to be relevant experience. They're not expecting you to have done an internship at Goldman Sachs already, but they are interested in knowing whether you have interests outside. So it could be extracurricular stuff or work experience, maybe you worked at a coffee shop. So there you could have gained interpersonal skills, transferable skills that would really relate to a financy role. So yeah, I tend to talk about 2 or 3 of those key experiences, and yeah, what I've learned from them. And then after that, I move on to my interests. So I talk about I, for example, really enjoy playing cricket. I enjoy long distance running as well. And that kind of shows the more human side to you, because for example, for me, when I mentioned cricket in one of my interviews, my Evercore interview. My interviewer was actually really interested in cricket as it is. And he said that he spoke about him playing in his team outside of work. And we ended up talking about that for like 5 minutes and then moved back to the interview. And that not only shows your interests outside of finance, but it also makes you more at ease when you start talking about your interests and when the interview becomes more of a conversation as opposed to interrogation. So yeah, that's really important. What a lot of people tend to do with this specific question is they'll have their CV next to them. So like say it's a Zoom call interview, they'll have their CV next to them and they'll almost regurgitate their CV as opposed to like showing their interest, like showing what they've achieved as opposed to telling. So yeah, you want to avoid just reading your CV because you'll sound quite monotonous and your answer might go on for quite a while. And yeah, you want to keep your answers between like 1.5 to 2 minutes. So yeah, I think that pretty much covers why you. So we can move on to why the company. So yeah, I think this is also a super important question because so yeah, what a lot of people tend to do when answering this is they'll go onto the company's like values and stuff like that. But what I found is that a lot of the company's values are actually quite similar. So they'll be like, we're super client focusing, we're client driven, we strive for excellence, just all the normal crap that you'll normally get on these company websites. But it doesn't differentiate a specific company. It doesn't differentiate Goldman Sachs from a Bank of America, for example. You want to find really niche specific points that you can talk about that's only relevant to that one company. So what I tend to do is I look at specific ESG initiatives that the company's done, because I personally am really interested in like how financial institutions play a role in like climate change or social development and things like that in poorer regions. So yeah, looking up ESG initiatives that are specific to that company is really important. Another thing I would do that I didn't actually do this at the spring level, but now for like summer applications and stuff, I'm starting to do more and more, is networking with people at the company. So maybe you could just send them like a personalized message on LinkedIn, talking about who you are and that you'd like to have a phone call or a coffee chat or something. Now in this COVID environment, I guess a phone call would be more appropriate. So yeah, just asking for a phone call, and then you could have like a 5 to 10 minute conversation about what the analyst role at the firm actually is, and why they really like the firm as opposed to any other firm. So yeah, just talking about the culture of the firm would be really important. And then you could also name drop in your interview. So you could be like, oh, so from speaking to so and so, I realized the culture really pertains to my own values and my own experiences, which is why Bank of America in particular is the place that I want to work at. You know, just making it really specific to that one company, I think is super important. Yeah, connecting with employees. I haven't really read these slides, so yeah. So yeah, for the next question, I guess we can move on to why the role. So in investment banking or whatever front office role you decide to do, you're going to need to show. Okay, so for this question, you're going to need to show your interest for that front office role, and B, show that you kind of have what it takes from your previous experiences to deal with a high pressure and fast moving environment. So a good way to tackle this question, I think, is so before your interview, maybe you could attend events from the firm. So I know on their website, on any firm's website, they'll have like an event section, So you just click on that and yeah, attend the event, and yeah, they'll kind of talk to you about what they do on a day-to-day role. So yeah, that's one thing. Attending events is super important. And then another thing, I guess, is maybe from your previous experiences. So let's say you're the founder of Clio, and you're really interested in writing about specific M&A deals, IPOs, and market trends. So because of that, you could potentially be like, so from having researched these articles, I realized that maybe a specific sector really interested you. And then to further this knowledge, you read up about this specific sector on the Financial Times. And because of that, you're more inclined to M&A deals as opposed to any other division in investment bank or IPOs or whatever. And then to like further this, to really stand out in this question, what I usually do is maybe drop in like a deal that's really interested me. So I particularly am interested in the healthcare division. So I would talk about maybe like the Microsoft and Nuance deal that's happened recently. You don't need to go too in depth for that, because they might ask you a follow-up question, and be like, okay, so why has this deal particularly interested you? In which case you'd know what to say. You could talk about the risks, the short-term and long-term implications, etc., etc. So yeah, that pretty much covers why the role. Just to note, like the role itself, yeah. So the differences between the front office division, so especially sales and trading and IB, they're two different kinds of pressures, right? So sales and trading is more like fast paced, and you need to make like quick decisions, like snap decisions, like on the spot. So it's that kind of pressure. Whereas investment banking is more like long-term pressure. So you're constantly facing like upcoming deadlines, whether that be like in a week or a few hours or a day, whatever. So maybe like tailoring your specific experiences to those two different kinds of pressures might be really crucial. But then again, they're not really expecting you to have faced crazy pressure like in investment banking or sales and trading. So I guess you could kind of like mold your experiences to suit whatever division you're applying for. So yeah, talking about your interest for that role and your experiences is really important. Yeah, so I guess the next one, why you'd be good at this role, that kind of ties into the previous question. So again, you could be talking about the kind of pressure that you've dealt with, or the fact that you've maybe been in a, sorry, you can't really see the, yeah. So yeah, talking about the pressure you've been under, or like you could also talk about how you faced clients, whether that be working in like a coffee shop or as a lifeguard or whatever, or like talking about your interests as well. So being the captain of your cricket team, for example, it shows your leadership skills, it shows your team working skills, it shows your ability to work with different kinds of people in different environments is really important. So yeah, you could also tie that into the previous answer. So I guess you're moving on to another motivational question. So tell me about a recent deal that you found really interesting. So yeah, again, this isn't really a difficult question, but it's a question that I find that a lot of people get wrong, or they don't know how to structure it properly. What people would tend to do is they maybe type up a deal that the company's done and almost regurgitate the deal, not word for word, but they'd summarize the deal. But instead, the interviewer is more interested in, why are you interested in this deal? And and are you critical about this deal? What are your own opinions about the deal? What conclusion can you come to from this deal? So I tend to start with, okay, so first I would maybe talk about the company and what they stand for and what they do. If it's not a well-known company, if it's, yeah, so yeah, talk about who the company is, then talk about the short-term and long-term implications. So for this, you've got to really do your research. Read around macro trends relating to that sector, read around the deal, about the different implications of the deal. And then what I tend to do is to talk about how those short-term implications of the deal link to macro trends. And that kind of shows that you're evaluating the deal yourself, and you're thinking about like what makes this deal great, or like what makes it not so great. So like, for example, you could talk about how, so I tend to talk about the Microsoft and Nuance deal because I personally find that really interesting. And I talk about how maybe one of the risks with that deal is because of the current macro trend of supply chain shocks, and especially within the semiconductor industry, it could mean that once the deal is complete, maybe the company might face some supply chain issues in the future, leading to their sales and their revenues declining. And then you could also say, but however, given the great synergies that could be gained from this merger, and given how Nuance's software abilities really link with Microsoft's healthcare for cloud for healthcare, I think the deal would have a positive impact and would allow Microsoft to gain even more market share in the healthcare space. So it shows that you're being like critical of the deal as opposed to just blurting out a news article. So yeah, those are pretty much all the like motivational questions you could get. I know competency is another type of question, but I know that's been previously covered, so I won't cover that today. So yeah, as I said before, I'm going to be also talking about how to really answer those motivational questions. I think this is even more important than like what you say, especially at the spring level. So I think the best way to prepare for any interview is record yourself. So I know like, yeah, just record yourself on like your MacBook or whatever on the like photo booth app. It's going to be really weird at first recording yourself, like talking to a camera, talking to no one, but trust me, you get used to it. So just record yourself, and trust me, you'll realize that you're actually less enthusiastic than you actually think. And that's mainly because you'll be more thinking about what you're trying to say as opposed to how you're saying it initially. You'll be thinking, okay, what's the next line? What's the next point I got to say? Oh, have I missed out this point? So by practicing, it will make what you say really, like, it will stick in your head a little bit better. And then from that, you can practice how you say it. So to come across as super enthusiastic and super interested, like just smiling here and there goes a long way. It makes you feel a little bit like more confident, and it makes the interviewer a bit more at ease. So yeah, smiling, using hand gestures all the time. Maybe you can like count, like say you have like 3 different points to make, you could just like count a bit. Yeah, hand gestures. And then like you might also realize that you have like little, like you do like weird things like moving around in your chair. I used to like swivel on my chair like this when I started practicing my interviews, and I realized I should stop that. Or maybe you're not looking directly at the screen, maybe you're looking at the wall or something, and like not having eye contact makes a big difference. Another thing to make note of when in delivering your answers is make sure you have pauses in your sentences. It kind of adds like another layer. It just makes you sound more interesting, I guess, as opposed to like having a monotonous voice, like monotonously going about your experiences and whatnot. Like you could have really interesting experiences, but if you don't deliver them really like really energetically, they almost count for nothing. Not nothing, but like they don't. Your experiences aren't as impactful. Another thing, I covered everything. Oh yeah, another thing. Try not to have like inflections at the end of your voice like this, because it makes you sound less confident and less assertive in what you're saying. I just realized I did it there again. But yeah, try not to have those inflections at the end of your voice. Another thing, try and like vary your tone of voice depending on what you're saying. Just things like that, things like that to be wary of. And like the more you record yourself practicing these answers, the more you'll realize that the more you find like what you need to work on, kind of thing. Um, and yeah, so that pretty much covers everything I've wanted to say about how and what to say. So I guess with that being said, we could open up to questions or if
Yeah, so thank you, Pravin, for your great presentation. We have some questions in the chat. So one of them is, when you're telling the interviewer why you, what are the skills and qualities that you think are worth mentioning?
Yeah, okay. So as I said, you don't necessarily need to have done like crazy internships at Goldman Sachs or whatever. What I do think goes a long way is showing your like showing that you're competent, showing that you've had those transferable skills in your previous experiences, like like working in a coffee shop, things like that. So the things I'm trying to think back to what I would have said. So I talked about being a tutor and how teaching people is something that I really enjoy. Presenting is something I really enjoy. So it kind of shows that you're adapting to working with different people, that kind of thing. Um, Another thing for why you would be like maybe you do have some relevant experience writing articles. Um, so I know like in university you can get these first year rep positions as well, or like analyst positions in like your university's M&A group. So there you'd be able to write about specific deals, and because of that, you'd be maybe because of that you feel like you're more in tune with current affairs and things like that, which is super important for for a role in finance.
Also, when you're like asking why you, would you mention the skill that the experience taught you? Like, would you say this experience taught me about time management or something? Or would you just talk about the experience and then kind of infer that? Like, what did you do?
I wouldn't tell that it showed me time management. I'd show that it taught me these skills. Um, yeah, showing and not telling is super important. So you could talk about the results that you've that you've made on this specific experience. So you could be like, oh, so from working at a coffee shop, we achieved X amount of sales in such a short period of time, and I achieved this by working with people and by managing my time more efficiently, kind of thing. So yeah, showing your results as opposed to telling, I think is super important.
Okay, cool. Another person asked, what do you mean by inflections in your voice? I guess just clarify what you mean by
Okay,
that.
so I did this quite a bit when I was like practicing my interviews. So like inflections are like you end your sentences with an inflection like this, so your voice kind of goes up instead of like sounding a bit more assertive. Do you know what I mean? So kind of like that. Yeah,
Okay.
I don't know how else to explain that, but yeah.
Yeah, I guess you don't want to have like ups in every single sentence, otherwise
Yeah.
it won't do it. Um, Holly asked, how many spring weeks do you recommend applying for? When did you start applying?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I started applying, I think, as soon as university started. You could also start like right now. Um, Wait, so sorry, what was the other half of the question?
When did you start applying? And like, how many would you recommend
How many?
applying for?
Apply to as many as you possibly can. Also make sure that you're obviously making sure you're managing your time effectively between your degree and between applying to these springs. Because I know usually your first year of your degree will count to not much. It'll count to for me, it counts to 1/9 my degree. So maybe you could prioritize springs a little bit more at times, depending on say you don't have an exam the next day, then yeah, maybe prioritize applying to springs and perfecting your interview game and perfecting your cover letters and things like that. I also think it's super important to get springs and not be having to frantically apply to summers in your second year, because your second year is going to be so much more difficult compared to your first year. So really, really try and get as many spring weeks as you can by applying to as many firms as you can.
So another question, can you talk about the Bank of America spring application process?
Yeah, so that was a pretty standard application process. So cover letter, CV. There were no tests for it. Other firms I've had to do tests for. So then after my cover letter, there was a video interview. So talking to a camera. So there'll be pre-recorded questions, and then you read them, and then just deliver your answer within a 3-minute period. And then after that, we had a telephone interview, not a Zoom call interview like this, just a telephone interview. And then after that, you get your offer.
Cool. I like the tips for higher view kind of the same as telephone, or is there a different way to answer telephone interview stuff
Wait,
if you can't see people?
Sorry, what was that?
Oh, it's if you're on a telephone interview, do you have the same tips as for a higher view interview, or is it different on telephone?
So I guess because it's a telephone interview, you could maybe have some notes or brief bullet points on your on your computer. In a high view, I don't recommend you do that. I don't recommend. So what some people do is they have all their word for word written answers over here, and then their high view question over here. You don't want to be doing that, because you kind of you kind of sound less enthusiastic when you're just reading, as opposed to saying things off the top of your head. So maybe just have bullet points instead, and then I guess you could do the same for a telephone interview. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'll just ask one other question. So should you tell them loads of stats during, I don't know, why you or why the company, or should you focus more on their culture or what they do in the news? How would you kind of put in the numbers but also not make it scripted, if you know what I mean?
I guess you kind of have to eyeball it. When you record yourself, does it sound natural? Does it sound like I'm just reading or memorizing a bunch of different numbers? So maybe don't throw in too many, but ones here and there definitely won't. They'll definitely go a long way in helping. Also, it's really good to quantify your results. You might have heard that before, on your CV as well. Quantify your results. So don't just say, "Oh yeah, my responsibilities were X, Y, and Z." Say, because of doing X, Y, and Z, we managed to increase sales by 100% or whatever. Or by initiating this outreach program, we managed to increase our followers by 200 followers, or something like that. So quantifying your results is super important, but not to the point where it sounds scripted.
Okay, cool. Another question is, do you have any extra things you wish you put on your CV, e.g. courses, etc.?
You don't really need to do courses that teach you about investment banking. I guess it won't hurt. You can if you want. You could learn your technicals now if you want. They definitely won't test you on those kind of things. But other things I wish I would have done. Maybe I could have. Okay, this isn't something I wish I put on my CV, but this is something I wish I did in general. So maybe I wish I could have like reached out to more analysts or associates, VPs, whatever, and like have had those telephone interviews. I didn't really do it at the spring level. I'm doing it at the summer level though, but it will definitely go a long way in those interviews if you name drop. It will show your interest. So that's one thing I wish I did. I also wish I applied to more firms. For me, the first few weeks of uni was kind of like overwhelming. Like the workload, it's a big jump from A levels. So maybe I could have like organized my applications a bit better. I could have also maybe written my cover letter before the application even opens, and that way, like you're kind of on the ball, and you're going to get your application in faster than anybody else. So your application is going to be viewed earlier, so you have more chance of getting that place. So yeah, that's one thing I would have done as well.
Another person asked me, what divisions does JP Morgan have? Did you actually apply for JP Morgan or?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, do you know like what divisions their spring weeks have? Because I think you might be able to just find it on their website.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure you could just find it on their website. I think it was. I applied for JP Morgan, if I remember correctly. You could apply to 3 divisions. I applied for investment banking, global markets, and then something else. I can't remember. Maybe asset management or something. But yeah, you should be able to find that out on their website.
Okay. Would you recommend like applying to multiple spring internships at the same company? Because I know sometimes you can't cater each, I don't know, motivational question to each one. So like, would you recommend applying to lots of them?
Okay, so when they interview you, they're only going to interview you for one division. They're not going to interview you for multiple divisions. If they do, then you'll have separate interviews. Um, I mean, it depends on the firm. Also, like sometimes firms might say if you've applied to 2 divisions, include why you want to join those 2 divisions in the same cover letter. That's something
Yeah,
I kind of don't recommend. I just apply to one if it requires one cover letter, because
yeah,
it doesn't. It kind of it doesn't really show your interest for one specific division.
cool.
Um,
Another question. How best do you go about researching companies so that in the interview it looks like you know a lot about them?
yeah, that's a good question. So yeah, as I said, like it's really hard to get specific information on a company. So yeah, because all their values will usually be quite similar. So yeah, as I said, like ESG initiatives is something I tend to look at. And like so I don't know, maybe they've released a new green bond, and that's something I'm super passionate about, like the environment or things like that. Yeah, so ESG initiatives, what else would I have done? Yeah, talking to analysts, networking. Um, maybe you could even go as far as to talking about that deal, a specific deal in the company that the company's done, and so you could be like, because of working on deals like this in this specific sector, and because of my interest in this sector, um, yeah, this company is I think stands out more than any other company. I think. Oh yeah, one more thing. Maybe you could talk about the type of firm it is. So, for example, if it's like if you're applying to an elite boutique like Evercore, as opposed to a bulge bracket like Bank of America, you could potentially say how the elite boutique kind of culture appeals more to you than a bulge bracket firm. So maybe you could talk about how working in smaller deal teams in an elite boutique kind of appeals to you more because you'd have more exposure to technical work and more responsibility, which is like why you'd want to go into that role in the first place.
Cool. Do you have any like I don't know, favorite article places that you like to look at around the firm, like not just on the firm's website news tab, but like do you read, I don't know, the Financial Times, or like what kind of articles would you recommend reading?
Yeah, so I only read the Financial Times, to be honest. You can read more if you want, like The Economist or Bloomberg, whatever. I just stick to the Financial Times. They're pretty reliable. Universities might sometimes have free subscriptions to like the FT or The Economist or something. So definitely look for that before you go out and purchase your own subscription.
Okay, yeah, because they get quite expensive, don't they?
Mm-hmm.
Also, someone asked, was your CV one page?
Yeah. Definitely only keep it to one page. Never,
Yeah.
never more than one page.
I think other places like law, they require two or something, but I think for banking and finance, they only care about one. So I think that's all the questions. I don't really have any more. And if anyone wants to put questions in the chat, they can now. Oh, another person put one. Should you mention online internships on your CV?
So I'm presuming you're talking about the ones that are like open to everyone.
Yeah, I think some of them are like on Forage, if anyone's done the JP
Yeah.
Morgan one on there. Yeah.
I tend not to because they're open to like everyone, and you can easily just lie about something like that. You can lie that you completed it, so I tend not to. If you don't have anything else to include, then yeah, sure, go ahead and include it just to fill out that white space. But as you go through university, as you go through your first year, you'll have more and more things to put onto your CV. So like as I said, first year rep positions or analyst positions, things like that. So yeah, maybe those could like fill out that white space instead.
Yeah, okay. Also, I have a question. So like how personal should you make your answers? I know when it's like why you need to include your own kind of story, but sometimes it might be like too much and you need to put more academic stuff when it's like why you. So I was just wondering like how personal you made it.
Um, I made it quite personal. So
Mhm.
like obviously not I didn't need to talk about stuff they don't need to know, like I don't know, uh, like what I like yeah, just like have a good balance between the two, I guess.
Yeah,
Um, so I would talk about my experiences. So when I would talk about my experiences, I'd be like, okay, so from doing this, um, it kind of made me realize the world of finance. And then through doing this, um, I decided to do this to do some other experience. And then to further this experience, I did something else or whatever, showing your interest in finance. Um, yeah,
cool. So you're just like building up from
yeah,
like one starting point and then
yeah, exactly.
continuing.
So it's kind of like you were talking about your experiences in a chronological order and how they link together.
Okay, yeah. So don't just toss random personal stories in there.
Yeah.
Another person asked, should analyst university positions be on your experience or extracurricular on your CV?
Wait, sorry, what was that?
Should analyst university positions be on your experience section or extracurricular section on your CV?
Um, I put it on the experience. No, actually, so for my CV, I have a experience section and then a positions of responsibility section and then interest. So I put that under positions of responsibility.
Okay, would you recommend like having two sections? Because I know if the experience section is like really long, they might just glaze over stuff. So what would you recommend?
Yeah, that's kind of why I do it. So it kind of breaks it into chunks, so it's easier to read, um, as opposed to it looking like an essay or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just tend to break it down.
Cool. I think that's the end of the questions and we need to finish at 1:45 anyway. If anyone has like more questions, feel free to connect to Pravin on LinkedIn and just message him privately. But yeah, I hope everyone enjoyed this presentation. It's also being recorded, so you can check it out on the YouTube channel. But yeah, thanks guys so much.
Thank you so much for having me, and like also to all you like first years, good luck for your first year, and good luck with spring week applications. So yeah, thank you.
Okay, I'll end the meeting now. Okay, bye.